For as long as I can remember, I have been someone who values honor and trust above all else in a relationship. These are the foundations I've always believed a strong partnership must be built upon. My fiancée, Emily, and I have been together for 4 years, and until recently, I truly believed we shared the same core principles. We had navigated our fair share of challenges and triumphs, like any couple. There were arguments, compromises, and moments of pure joy that made me feel we were destined for one another. I envisioned a beautiful future together, and we had planned our wedding with excitement and hope. However, I never imagined we would end up at this point, me calling off our wedding over something that completely shattered everything I thought we stood for. It all started with what seemed like a minor disagreement about the wedding preparations. Over the past few weeks, I have been overwhelmed with work and hadn't been as involved in the planning as Emily wanted me to be. She had taken on most of the burden, and I understood her frustration. Planning a wedding is a monumental task, and the stress can weigh heavily on anyone. The tension between us had been building, but I never thought it would escalate into something so intense. That night, everything came to a head. We were sitting in the living room, going over the guest list for what felt like the 100th time. Emily was insistent on inviting some distant relatives I barely knew. From my perspective, having them there felt unnecessary. I suggested we keep the wedding more intimate, not just to stay within our budget, but to create a more meaningful experience. I thought it was a reasonable compromise, but Emily saw it differently. She felt I was disregarding her wishes and not taking the planning process seriously. Her frustration boiled over, and she raised her voice. "You never take this seriously," she snapped. "Do you even care about this wedding?" Her words cut deep. I could hear the pain and anger behind them, but I tried to remain calm, to be the voice of reason. "Of course I care, Emily," I said evenly, "but we need to be realistic about what we can afford. We can't invite everyone just to make others happy." That's when it happened. She stood up suddenly, her face flushed, her eyes blazing with anger. The room felt heavy, charged with a tension I had never felt before. Before I could even process what was happening, she slapped me across the face. The sound of her hand meeting my cheek echoed through the room, cutting through the argument like a thunderclap. For a moment, everything went still. The shock of it left me speechless. I just stared at her, my mind struggling to grasp what had just happened. Her expression changed instantly. The anger drained from her face, replaced by a look of horror and regret. She covered her mouth with her hand, her eyes wide. "Oh my God, I didn't mean to," she stammered, her voice trembling. But I couldn't let her continue. Something inside me had already snapped. My voice was cold and steady, words I never thought I'd have to say. "That's it. I'm not marrying someone who thinks it's okay to put their hands on me." She begged me to stay, to sit down and talk. Tears welled up in her eyes as she reached out, but I couldn't stay. I walked out the door, needing space to think. My heart was pounding, my thoughts racing, but deep down, I knew my decision was final. In that single moment, the respect and trust that had once formed the bedrock of our relationship had been destroyed. The next few days were a whirlwind of pain, confusion, and difficult conversations. I called off the wedding and informed our families. The news hit everyone like a shockwave. Emily's parents couldn't believe it. They reached out to me, trying to understand what had happened. They were kind, respectful, and clearly devastated. They explained that Emily had been under immense stress, that the pressure of planning the wedding had overwhelmed her, and that she hadn't meant to hurt me. I listened, but I couldn't let it excuse her actions. Stress might explain what she did, but it didn't justify it. Everyone faces stress, but resorting to violence is a choice. Emily's response was a roller coaster. She called me repeatedly, leaving messages filled with raw emotion. Sometimes, she was crying, begging for forgiveness. Other times, she was angry, accusing me of overreacting and throwing away for years over a single mistake. Her words were filled with desperation and confusion. Her parents tried to mediate, reaching out to me and hoping to smooth things over. They wanted to repair what had been broken, but I couldn't see how that was possible. Their efforts were well-intentioned, but they didn't change what had happened. As the days went by, I found myself questioning everything. Was I being too harsh? Was I making a mistake by ending things so abruptly? Could this one moment really undo 4 years of love and shared memories? But every time I thought about it, I came back to the same undeniable truth. Respect and trust are irreplaceable. Once they're broken, rebuilding them is not an easy task. Forgiveness is essential, but so are boundaries. I realized that staying and ignoring what had transpired would set a perilous precedent. I couldn't marry someone who had crossed such a significant line, no matter how deeply I had once loved her. Walking away from the future we had meticulously planned was one of the most challenging decisions of my life, but I knew it was the right one. Respect is the bedrock of love. Without it, everything else crumbles. At first, I wrestled with the idea of ending our relationship over what seemed like a single lapse in judgment. It felt severe, almost inflexible, to discard everything we had built because of one moment. However, as I reflected on the broader implications, I realized this wasn't merely about the slap. It was about what that act symbolized. If such a thing could happen during a minor disagreement, what might unfold during more severe challenges in the future? Could I genuinely trust her to handle conflict maturely and respectfully? These questions weighed heavily on my mind, and the more I considered them, the clearer the answer became. Emily wasn't ready to let go. One evening, she showed up unannounced at my apartment, tears streaming down her face, pleading with me to reconsider. "I know I messed up," she sobbed, her voice trembling. "I wasn't thinking. Please don't throw away everything we built because of one mistake." Her pain was raw, and for a fleeting moment, I wanted to console her. I could see how much she cared, and I cared for her too, but I had to remain true to what I knew was right, no matter how much it hurt. "I've thought about this extensively," I responded, striving to keep my tone gentle. "I understand you're sorry, and I believe you didn't intend for this to happen. But I can't disregard what occurred. It's not just about that single moment. It's about how you reacted under pressure. What happens the next time we face a difficult situation? I can't build a marriage on this kind of uncertainty." She promised to change, to seek therapy, and address her anger issues. She vowed to do whatever it took to make things right between us. For a moment, guilt washed over me. I knew she was sincere, and I believed she genuinely wanted to improve. Her love for me was evident, and the thought of losing everything we had created was almost unbearable. But I couldn't allow my emotions to cloud my judgment. As powerful as love is, it isn't enough to erase glaring red flags. The fallout from the canceled wedding was tumultuous. Friends and family reacted in varied ways. Some fully supported my decision, commending me for prioritizing my well-being and setting firm boundaries. Others criticized me, unable to comprehend why I ended such a significant commitment over what they viewed as a singular mistake. One of Emily's bridesmaids even called, her tone laced with frustration. "It was just one slap," she argued. She was stressed. "You could have talked it out instead of humiliating her by canceling the wedding. But this wasn't about revenge or embarrassment. It wasn't about punishing Emily for her actions. It was about safeguarding myself and recognizing warning signs for what they were. I couldn't imagine entering a marriage where I constantly worry about stepping on an invisible line, second-guessing my every action to avoid another explosive reaction. Some friends reminded me of how society often dismisses abuse when men are the victims. They praised me for recognizing the reality of the situation and having the courage to stand firm. Their encouragement helped reinforce my decision, though the emotional weight of it all lingered. As weeks turned into months, the chaos began to settle, but the emotional wounds remained. Emily eventually stopped reaching out, though I heard through mutual friends that she remained bitter about how things ended. Part of me hoped she'd reflect, learn, and grow from the experience. However, deep down, I knew her personal growth was no longer my responsibility. My focus had to shift toward healing myself and rediscovering my identity outside of that relationship. Looking back, I know I made the right decision. A strong, enduring marriage must be founded on respect and trust, and those cannot exist without clear boundaries. Emily crossed a line I couldn't overlook, and walking away, as painful as it was the healthiest choice for my well-being. Now, I'm focusing on moving forward and finding my own path. Healing is a slow and challenging journey, but this experience has imparted an invaluable lesson. Love should never come at the cost of self-respect. Sometimes, the most difficult decisions we make are the ones that ultimately save us.